Salesforce MVP. I'm also an architect. I work for my own company. I have lots of activities in the community. Really happy to be there. I'm also organizing myself some other dreaming events, like in France, if you want to attend. It's not far from here. Also Morocco in October, if you want some sunshine at the end of the year, just come and we'll have some speech there.
So I'm Fabrice Challier. I'm working as a tech lead. I'm a Salesforce instructor, and good news for admin, I'm used to work with rad women as instructor, so I'm used to work with admin, and that's the reason of the presentation, showing you how you can use the Tooling API even if you're an admin, just to show you it's not that difficult. Okay?
Okay, so we'll split this session in 3 parts. First, we'll have a quick presentation of the API globally, what is an API, how to use it. Then we'll see together the purpose of the Tooling API. And of course, we'll have really practical use cases that you can have in your journey as an administrator. So you don't have to take a picture of everything what will be displayed in this presentation, because at the end of the presentation you will have a link where you can download the presentation. It'll be easier.
Doria, your microphone's not working that well, so you would like to sit here.
It's not too echo. It's better.
Is that better?
Is it better? Is it better if I speak like this? Okay. Next. Okay. First, what is an API? Maybe some of you don't use API because you are not developers, and that's normal. Let's say you are going to the restaurant. You don't go straight to the kitchen and enter and say, hey, I want this, thank you, and then go back to the table. No. You go to the waiter, and the waiter has a kind of menu with all the options you have in the restaurant. And you go to the waiter go to the kitchen, and go back to you. It's exactly the same with an API. You have a kind of menu to access the data on another system. You can get the data, change them, delete them, create some of them. It depends on the rights you have on this API, and it's a way to access data without accessing them directly. It also visualizes your efforts because you have only one API for all the systems in your architecture. So everybody is using one single point, and you have only one effort to produce for all the systems to access your data. Now, in the Salesforce world, we have many APIs. I will just present you 3 kinds of API. First, we have the API to retrieve or manage the data. Like you have the REST API, the SOAP API, quite the same, not just the same syntax, let's say, to keep it simple. And the bulk API, REST and SOAP to retrieve single reports, and the bulk to retrieve a lot of records in a single call. Then you have also the event management. If you are used to create, for example, platform events, some of you have already created platform events with the flows? No, not yet? Okay. Let's say you want to change something on the screen, something happened somewhere else. Try not to go. Somewhere else on the other IS or somewhere else outside Salesforce, you want the user to be informed. You have to manage the event. So you can use the streaming API with the platform event. This is another kind of API. And then we have the kind of API we are talking about today. It's related to metadata, so configuration. The configuration is one technique, but also the development side. And to do this, you have the Metadata API and you have the Tooling API. When we speak about the metadata, of course, it's going about the configuration. And in fact, if you have to deploy something to have the data from one environment to another environment, then we speak about metadata. And if you have to import, export things, then it goes about data. This is the difference between the two notions. I told you there was two kinds of API available to manage the metadata. You have the Metadata API and the Tooling API. This is the focus of this session. Difference between them is that Metadata API is only available in SOAP. And the Tooling API is also available in REST and is queryable. So this is what I will show you as use cases. The Metadata API retrieves the result in nodes, so a kind of hierarchy in the information you get, and the Tooling API is more kind of list. This is a flat list of everything that you can retrieve. The Metadata API is more used for configuration migration. If you deploy something from one environment to another, you will go through the Metadata API. And for the Tooling API, it's more used for debugging or health check reviewing purpose. That's the main difference between both.
Yeah, what we wanted to show here is that if you go for Metadata API with Workbench, most admin are used to do it and developers too, you will have the information, but you will have in a way that you cannot select the one you want, you will have to go one by one. As soon as you go for Tooling API with query, you can either get all the values if you want all of them, or you can say, I want to focus on a specific one, and you can say what are your criteria, and you will have only the one you want to see. Okay? And that's what we will show you just after. With queries, it's the main interest of the Tooling API is that with the filtering, you can only say what you want to see. And with the fields, you can select the information you want to see. You don't have to grab everything. Main difference between Tooling API and Metadata API is full name is available through the Metadata API. With the Tooling API, it's difficult to get it. Okay?
Okay, why to use the Tooling API in this session, in fact. So for different profile, different users. For developer, it's mainly used to be sure to manage your code. For example, you need to check if there is something somewhere in your code. You can use the Tooling API. We had this morning another session related to the Dependency API. Well, it's related. It's also used for debugging, testing. All the development and deployment cycle is it's involved in the Tooling API. Now for admins, it's also a good way to use the Tooling API is to automate your review. For example, you're an admin and you have an org running for a while and you want to be sure everything is going well in your org, that you're configuring the right way, you follow the best practices, you don't have any fields or elements that you need to skip from the org because it's not more useful. Well, you can use the Tooling API to be sure everything is okay and take action on what needs to be decluttered on your org. As Fabrice said, the main advantage of the Tooling API is that you can use a simple query and then get all the elements by this query. So you need to know which kind of tool you can use to query the Tooling API. We have many. We have Workbench for those of you more with a development profile. Workbench is also allowing us to query the Tooling API, but I have to say it's not the easiest way to do that. So on my side, I won't use Workbench, but yeah, needed to mention it anyway. The developer console is pretty simple to use. If you already queried some data on the developer console, it's exactly the same. So you open the developer console, you have the query editor, you put your query there, and you check here the use Tooling API. That's the only difference with a normal record query. You have also extension related to Chrome. You have the inspector plugin that you can add to Chrome. Exactly the same that with the developer console. You put your query, you say that it is a query using the Tooling API. Now you're done. You export your results. You have also other tools like this is a French tool developed by a French CTA. The advantage is that you can export the result directly in Excel. Use cases. That's why we are here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say I want to best practice as an admin. I create a custom field. I need to put a description. It's part of the documentation. So if I want to see all the created fields, all my objects in one view, and be sure a description is added, I can make a simple query. So I will retrieve the custom field. This is a kind of, let's imagine it's a kind of object you have in your org. It's a system object. So you have the custom field. You retrieve all the information related to this custom field, like when it was created, when it was modified, the developer name, and of course, you also need to know on which object this field was created. So you have the entity definition, and this is the object, and you retrieve the developer name. You all know what is the developer name, the API. And then you have this list of results showing you all the custom fields available on the platform with the ID, the API name, the name of the object, and the fact that there is a description put on it or not. Of course, you can also filter to retrieve only the custom field with that description. This is also an option.
Starting from now, as long as we don't say there is a limit, it means there is no limit. So for example, if you execute the query, if you have 50,000 custom fields, Salesforce will bring the 50,000 fields. It will not complain because there is too many fields. It will bring them all at once. If there is a limit, I will highlight the limit because you have to know them. Okay? So we introduced the entity definition. Entity definition is really the keyword you need to catch on this station. It will be the object that is representing all your metadata inside your organization. So if you are in a simple way, if you're executing a simple so-called query without Tooling API, you have access to entity definition, but Salesforce will only have access to a part of the metadata. When you switch to the Tooling API, entity definition has access to all the metadata within the organization, and you have a limit that is starting. You cannot query more than 2,000 entity definitions at once. So if you want to have some information regarding them, you will have to filter them until you are below 2,000 entity definition. If you have a clean org, I think you already have by default around 1,500 entity definition. And as soon as you will add some object, custom thing like this, Salesforce will add some entity definition and you will be above the 2,000 limit. So just be aware of this. Then entity definition is using different type of field. We highlight the field you have to know. So the first one is the entity definition ID. If you are on a standard object, the entity definition ID will be the name of the object. If it's a custom object, you will have a real ID. If you want to have access to the real name of the object, you have either the qualified API name if you want the technical name, or you can go for the master label, which is not displayed, but there is the master label that will give you the label of the object. So you have to switch between the different fields of the entity definition regarding what you want to see. So it's really the keywords you need to catch is entity definition will be the pilot for almost all the query you will use.
Another thing you need to ensure as an admin is the security. Of course, everything is security related to Salesforce. And let's say you have an old org and you activated though the community. By activating the community, it comes with the external sharing model. So it's now split between internal and external. And by default, before these last two releases, all the objects were public. Now it's changed. When you activate a community, it's by default private. So you have to know that for older environment, it was public, and you need to ensure that you only give access to people that needs to have access. It's not possible regarding the security to leave it open to everybody. Oh, be careful with that. One way to be sure of it is to retrieve all the objects and to have the internal and external model. Now you will say, okay, but I can go to the settings, sharing, and have the list, and I have the same than here. Of course, you can. But we are showing this presentation only to show you that with a couple of queries, you can only use the developer console to retrieve everything from one single point and to boost your productivity, and not having to go from setup page to setup page and change it. And also, when you have the query, you can automate the retrieve of all the results. Of course, as admin, it will be a bit difficult for you to automate it because it will need a piece of code. But you can go to your developer and say, hey, here are the queries. I want to retrieve this result each month or each week. You see, this is why we are using this kind of approach. Now, when you are looking at the objects, sometimes you need to exclude all the objects related to one package you install, because if it's a managed package, you basically don't have access to the setup of this object. It's managed by the ISV. So to do that, you say that you only need to retrieve the local object. So it means all excepted the managed package, and the qualified name ending by the __C. Because if it's a standard object, it's not possible for me to manage many options are not available for the standard object. Like, for example, it's not possible yet to put a description on a standard field. It's only for the custom field. So sometimes it's useful to filter it. And in this example, we wanted to check which object is searchable. So if I make a quick, you see when you create an object, at the first steps of the creation, you have to say, yes, the user can perform searches on this object. You can forget to activate this option. So this is a way to retrieve all the objects, and if you can perform a search on it, if you can perform reporting on it, and also if the field history tracking is activated. So now everything in one single view, not having to go to all the objects one by one. Yeah, for lazy people.
And we just display a few fields for each of the objects. If you want the whole information, you go inside the documentation of Salesforce, look for Tooling API. For each object, they will tell you which field you can use and what is the purpose of the field. So be curious. We try to use some of the fields we have seen. There is a lot. Maybe you will discover things we have not discovered. So just be curious. Okay. So here you have an example for validation rules. So Doria chose the way I want to have homogeneous wording for my error message. for me, if I use this, it's not what I'm interested in. When I'm using validation rule, my org is using quite a lot. Nothing is documented, so sometimes you have warnings, say, this rule has been applied, you don't know which object is applying the rule, which is a nightmare. But if you use the validation rule, you can say, you can put as a criteria, I want all the validation rules where the error message contains something, and it will tell you where are the validation rules on which objects they are. So you can easily track what object can trigger this validation rule, so you can fix or you can help your admin, your users or whatever.
I think it's the next slide.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So I will, so yeah. So Doria will explain this one, I explain the next one. Sorry, Doria.
Now you see what you heard what you...
That's why she's here, because I'm developer and she's the architect, so.
Hey, developer. For this use case is when you create validation rule and you have a big project with several teams, it's really useful to have the same wording, the same way of speaking with the user. You cannot say for one error message, blah 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 field missing, point, and then another message. This field is mandatory. Please inform this field. No, you have to bring homogeneity. UX and UI is also part of our work. This is a way to retrieve all the messages and to align the wording between them. So this is what I wanted to say on this slide.
Okay. So this one I explained. So sorry. So this one is the one I use the most. I discovered it very recently, and it's one of my favorite one. Is if you want to know which layout are not used inside your organization, just use this query. It will discover all the layouts that are not assigned to a record type and a profile. So you can say this layout is not used anymore. So you execute it, you have the list, after you can check, but all the layouts you have here, you can delete them, or you can wonder why they are there, because nobody is using them anymore, okay? So it's typically the type of things that any admin should know, because it's really useful on a daily basis or monthly basis, depends when you want to check. But one query that will give you the result, you don't have to go one by one, check if the layout is used or not, okay? One thing, and it's the issue with the tooling API, is sometimes you won't have access to the entity definition. You will have access to what Salesforce called the table name or ID. It's the way to say it's where you will locate the entity definition. So you have to be ready. Sometimes they won't have the entity definition. Table name or ID will be the answer it will give you, okay? So just be aware of this.
Flow. Of course, we will speak about flows. You have a flow, you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 version, and of course, you need to retrieve the information. The first thing to know about the tooling API with flow is that you need to exclude the status obsolete. Obsolete is the status for the previous version. So to retrieve only one single line per flow, exclude them. And here there is a way to retrieve all the flows and to check which one is running in system mode. But you say, oh, system mode, you bypass all the security and everything. No, be careful. Not a good thing. So it's a way to go through all the flows and check which one is running in run mode. And of course, if the description is there, as an admin, I don't want to have to loop all the elements of my flow to understand what it's doing. So please put a description. Be kind with the other admins in your team.
And process type is where you will discover, so workflow means process builder. So just be aware, it's not obvious, but once you're used to it, you know workflow means process builder.
Yeah, and workflow is not under flow, it's under workflow. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go back to the previous slide, please.
Sorry.
Also, we wanted to just to highlight also that, of course, the process builder needs to be deleted from the org and passed to the flow. So this is also a way to retrieve all your automation in this one single view. So you should not have workflow lines anymore. Bad example. The limit. So when you manage your org, you have to keep in mind the limit, even as an admin. It's not only related to development. For example, you have limits related to the number of local filter you can put, also the number of custom field you can create. There are a lot of limits, and they are not all the same. It depends on the type of object you have. This is a way to retrieve all the limits related to one single object, and it's only possible to retrieve the limit for one single object. So this is why you have to define the entity definition ID here, the account, for example. Some queries, for some queries, it's mandatory to give the object you want to query on. And for, like you saw for the custom fields, for example, you can retrieve all the objects, but this kind of information is limited to one single object. And if you don't put the where condition, you will get an error. The error saying it is not possible to retrieve many objects.
Yeah, you will have more or less this. It will ask you for entity definition or durable ID. Just a way to say you have to refine the query. I don't want to do it for you like you said it. Okay, so we said Tooling API, very few limits, but this is typically the kind of limit you will hit very quickly. Don't be afraid. It's just asking you for the type of object you want to filter on. So if you know the ID of the object, pass the entity definition ID. If you don't know the name of the object, you can go for entity definition dot, and you put master label, qualified API name, whatever is easy for you, and then you can put the value. Okay.
If you're a developer, it would be easier to make this kind of exercise, but we are focusing here on admin, so I just wanted to show you how you can find workarounds without having to develop as an admin. For example, I want to know the custom fields are not displayed on the layout. Maybe there are technical fields, but maybe there are fields that were once created and never used, so they need to be deleted from the org. Basically, what you will do is you will get all on one side, all the custom fields available, right? And then you will have the list of all the layouts with all the custom fields present on the layout. And then you will have, for those of you that are used to work with Excel, a VLOOKUP function to match them. And then you will directly see which field is never used on any of the objects. This is the process you need to follow to do that. First, you retrieve all the layouts and all the fields on this layout, basically, which field is shown on the layout. So you have the first list. And this is done by the metadata component dependency object.
Yeah, so just metadata component dependencies in beta. Salesforce said end of last year that they want to decommission this API. Today, developers are yelling at Salesforce because we don't want Salesforce to destroy this because we use it. Answer from the project manager is that it seems that the metadata component dependency is not used enough so that Salesforce can support it. So today, I'm just asking you, even if you don't want to do, just execute this query sometimes just to say, we need it, we don't care, okay? So they will say, no, it's just something that it's really useful because here you have an example, but metadata component dependency can really say, which metadata is linking to another one. So it's really something developers use a lot. Happy Soup, if you know it, use it, and many other software are using it. So try to push some pressure on Salesforce to say, don't destroy it now, at least, or provide something to replace it very, so we can continue our work. Okay.
So now you have the list of all the custom fields displayed on any layout, and you will retrieve on the other side, we already show that, the custom field list. And the third...
No, I don't want to show the last one. Okay, I go. Excel.
Yes, and then you go in Excel, and pretty simple, one tab for the dependency, so the custom field displays, another tab for all the list of your custom fields, and one third tab match with the VLOOKUP. I will not explain the VLOOKUP function.
So the idea was really to do the presentation for admin, but if you have developers in your team, you can ask your developer to do this. They are used to this. They should be able to provide you this type of information without going to Excel. So just do the way you prefer.
And if there are some developers in the room, just put a simple map.
Yeah. And if your developer is asking more than 1 hour to do it, just send me an email. I will explain you how to do it in less than 1 hour. Okay?
Same thing on my side. If you don't know the VLOOKUP option, okay, I will explain it.
Yeah, and if you want to go for Excel, that's all, not me.
Okay.
So, okay. So regarding the meta component dependency, except the fact that Salesforce is planning to remove it, we are not sure. You can only retrieve 2,000 records at once. It means that if you're trying to grab more than 2,000 records, Salesforce will not complain, and it's really a nightmare when you start with this. Salesforce will only retrieve a group of records that is coherent for him. So sometimes it will say, okay, I can bring 1,633 records because there is more than 2,000, and you say, okay, I've got everything, and in fact, you don't have everything. It's just Salesforce is unable to provide everything, so it just choose the records you want to grab, he will return to you without warning. So if you don't do this, just be careful if you are close to the limit. Ask yourself if it's really the result you're expecting, or if Salesforce is not hiding some results because the limit has been overthrown. Okay? So just be careful. It's really something I hit at the beginning when I was using this API. Now I know I have to be careful, but it's really something that is very easy to do a mistake when you start with this API if you want to use it. But try to use it, not only because we want Salesforce to keep it alive, but also because it's really a nice API that can help on many subjects.
So just to summarize, the dependency is which component is using which component, and you get one line per relationship. That's why you got a lot of relationship. For example, if you have 3 types of layout and 50 fields, standard or custom, then you already have like 150 lines. That's why you are reaching the limit much more faster than you can think. One way to avoid that is by querying, limiting object per object. So if you check first the account, and then the opportunity, and then the case. Don't try to do everything in one single query.
Then, if you are used to do the release update checkup, which is my job as a tech lead, but I know some admin are used to do it. Normally, what you have to do is you have to go through this and check whatever has been done, and I hate to do this manually. So if you're lazy like me, what you can use is a simple query that will give you almost the same result that you have here within a kind of table, and this you can export to Excel, and you can filter it, you can do whatever you want, you can discuss with admin developers, and say, okay, this is done, not done. So here it will tell you where you are with the release update. So upcoming means it's not done. It will tell you if you have already activated the update, so you don't have to focus on it anymore. There is a lot of information. So it's really a simple query that you can use almost every 4 months for release. You can check wherever you are within the release. Okay? And the last one is if you want to monitor what's happening regarding your sandbox, there is an easy way to do it, which is not very easy to discover, which is called Sandbox process. Sandbox process is telling you for each of your sandbox when the sandbox has been refreshed. So it's, as a tech lead, my duty is to be sure that my team is not using sandbox that has not been refreshed for more or less than, they have to refresh the sandbox every 2 weeks for me. So I can easily check here if they're doing the job or not. If someone is keeping a sandbox for more than 2 weeks, I can go and say, why are you keeping the sandbox? Maybe there is a reason, but I want to be sure my team is aware of what they're doing. Okay? So very simple query. The hardest path was to find the right word, because sometimes Salesforce is using a difficult word for simple things. Okay? And I think we missed one. Sorry for this. There is one object that is very useful called external string, I guess. And it's your custom label. It means you can have access to your custom label through a simple query. So I can show you. It will be easier. So.
If you have Wi-Fi.
So here, yeah. Go for what I want. So what I want to do. All right. So, this will be easier like this, I guess. So here you can find your custom label. So you will find the name of your custom label. You can find the master label, and moreover, you can find the value you put inside the custom label. So for example, if you're looking for any custom label containing whatever value, like Paris, you could say, I want to grab all the value. I'm not sure I've got one, but something like this. And if there is some value, yeah. So if there is custom label containing the value, the Tooling API will be able to tell you this custom label is containing the value you want to use. So it's a common way to find custom label already containing the information you want to use, and not to create a new one when there is already one containing the information. Okay? So it's one query you forget, I will add it inside the slide, because it's really something I use on a daily basis, because I don't want to write again a custom label if it's already present inside my database. Okay? And that's it.
Next.
And yeah, we are.
That's not it.
Yeah.
So we hope we enjoyed the session. As we mentioned, we think that the Tooling API is really useful, and we think this way because we are using it in our review. It's a way to boost your productivity, not to have to do things manually. Just keep a bunch of queries in a text file, and you will retrieve all the information automatically. Of course, there are a lot of notions here, a lot of new information for you Please note that it's also documented on the official Salesforce website. So it's pretty well documented. For one time, it's pretty simple to understand even for an admin. And also, if you are struggling with the retrieve of one type of information, because not everything is in the Tooling API, or maybe you don't know how to retrieve it, go to your developer colleagues and ask for help. They also need to use the Tooling API just as you. Of course, we already mentioned, if you need some support, feel free to ask. We are open person.
Yeah.
Reach out. We are here to help and also to know each other. It's a good way. And here you have the same deck available. It will be easier than pictures.
So if you have questions now, you can ask them. So if you have questions later on, feel free to send email. We'll be more than happy to answer and maybe discover new things or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot do it with Tooling API. You can do it with simple API. It's just, you don't need the Tooling API to do it. I don't remember which object is in charge. I think it's permission set.
Permissions.
Yeah, but there is a table, which is the permission. It will give you for each of the field who has access to the field. So there is a way to do it in a simple. It will not change it, but it will be able to tell you which field are visible or not for someone. Okay, so you want to change. So changing is quite, yeah. There is no easy way to do it, I think.
With Apex, you can, but not simply with Tooling. Another question?
No, you cannot. No. The idea of the Tooling API is really expose the data, do what you want with them, but it's not done to be directly modified with the tool.
But you can, yeah, there are other things that you can also automate. For example, I don't know, you want to create fields in a bulk mode because you already know specifically technical fields. Like I have recently a client willing to have one checkbox per service that he is offering. I don't want to. I had to put the checkbox on the leads and then as pick list values on the opportunities. I don't want to do that manually. It's boring to create 20 checkbox. List, bulk, done. So this is also one way to automate things. As an admin, you need to master some little pieces of code, at least to help yourself. You mean with the Excel plugin available?
Not a plugin, you can just Power Query.
I don't. It's a plugin on Excel.
There's not a plugin that natively part of Excel.
I have I've seen ways of retrieving data in Excel directly and synchronizing them, but never using the Tooling API. I think you are limited to real data. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately not yet. All right.
Okay.
Let's
so,
launch.
yeah, thanks a lot.